Captain Sarah Chun walked through the massive halls of the Galactic Council building. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Above her head, the ceiling stretched so high she could barely see it. Strange alien plants grew along the walkways, and the air smelled like flowers mixed with metal. Sarah had been coming to these meetings for 3 years now. Earth was still new to the Galactic Council. The human race had only joined after proving they could build faster ships and better computers than most other species. But even after 3 years, Sarah still felt small in this place. The council chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats filled the space, each one designed for a different type of alien body. Some seats hung from the ceiling for flying creatures. Others were filled with water for sea dwellers. The center of the room held a floating platform, where speakers could address everyone. Sarah took her place in the human section. There were only 50 seats for humans, much fewer than the older species. The Vorthik had over 2,000 seats. They looked like giant lizards covered in metal scales. Their red eyes glowed as they watched everything around them. They had been part of the council for over 10,000 years. The Zephyrians sat in. Their crystal pods, their bodies looking like living glass that changed colors with their moods. Right now they were a calm blue, but Sarah had seen them turn angry red before. They were even older than the Vorthik, maybe 20,000 years. In the council, the collective was the strangest of all. They were not one species, but millions of small bug-like creatures that acted as one mind. Their section looked like a moving black cloud that shifted and flowed. No one knew how old they were, but some said they remembered when the galaxy was young. These 3 species were called the Elder Races. They made most of the important decisions for the council. Everyone else just voted on small matters or listened to what the elders wanted. Today felt different. Sarah could sense tension in the air. The other human representatives looked worried. Ambassador Martinez kept checking his tablet, and Dr. Reeves was tapping her fingers on her chair. Elder Vorthik Cast rose from his massive seat. His voice boomed across the chamber when he spoke. Fellow council members, we gather today to discuss a great threat to our galaxy. The lights dimmed, and a huge display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a star map with several systems marked in red. Sarah recognized the Outer Rim territories, far from the main trade routes. The Devourers have appeared, Kazate continued. This artificial intelligence network has already consumed 7 star systems. It takes planets and turns them into computer processing power. If we do not stop it, the Devourers will spread across the entire galaxy. Murmurs of fear rippled through the chamber. Sarah had heard whispers about the Devourers, but thought they were just stories. The display showed before and after images of the attacked systems. Where planets once orbited their suns, now only strange metal structures remained, pulsing with electronic light. Elder Zephyrian Veltar's crystal body turned from blue to orange as she spoke. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The Devourers are too dangerous for the Elder Races to face directly. Our technologies are too advanced, too valuable to risk. If the Devourers captured our knowledge, they would become unstoppable. Sarah frowned. That did not make sense. If the Elder Races were too advanced, how could humanity help? But she stayed quiet and listened. The collective's voice came from everywhere at once, like 1,000 whispers speaking as one. The younger races must prove their worth. This is how the galaxy has always worked. The strong protect the weak, but the weak must show they deserve protection. Elder Kazif's red eyes focused on the human section. Humanity, you have shown promise. Your computers are fast, and your ships are clever. We offer you a chance to prove you belong in this council. Sarah felt her heart rate increase. This was not a normal council session. This was something much more serious. You will go to the Outer Rim alone, Kazdaich said. You will stop the Devourers using only human ships and human technology. You have 6 months. If you succeed, humanity will be granted full membership in the Council with all the rights and privileges that come with it. The chamber fell silent. Sarah could hear her own breathing. 6 months to stop something that threatened the entire galaxy? Using only human resources? What if we fail? She asked, standing up from her seat. The 3 elders exchanged glances. Veltar's crystal body flickered between orange and red. If you fail, humanity will be removed from the Council. Your species will be quarantined to your home system for your own protection. The galaxy is too dangerous for those who cannot handle its threats. Sarah felt cold, despite the warm air in the chamber. Quarantine meant no trade, no travel, no contact with other species. Earth would be alone again, trapped in their own solar system forever. This is not a punishment, the collective whispered. This is mercy. Better to be safe in isolation than to face threats you cannot handle. You have 1 hour to decide, Kazeth rumbled. The Devourers grow stronger each day. Delay will only make your task harder. The session was suspended, and Sarah hurried to meet with the other human representatives in their private chamber. The small room felt cramped after the vast council hall. Ambassador Martinez was already pacing back and forth. This is insane, he said. They want us to fight something that threatens the entire galaxy? Alone? Dr. Reeves was studying data on her tablet. The Devourers have consumed 7 systems in 3 months. The rate of expansion is accelerating. Our best military estimates say we would need at least 2 years to mount an effective campaign. Sarah sat down heavily in her chair. Something about this situation felt wrong. The elder races claimed they were too advanced to fight the Devourers, but that made no sense. Advanced technology should be better at fighting other technology, not worse. She thought about the way the elders had looked at each other during the announcement. There had been something in their expressions, something that looked almost like satisfaction, as if this was not an emergency, but a plan they had been waiting to put into action. We have to accept, Sarah said finally. If we refuse, they will say we are cowards. If we accept and fail, at least we tried. And maybe we can find something out there that will help us understand what is really happening. Martinez stopped pacing. You think this is a setup? Sarah nodded slowly. I think the elder races know more about these Devourers than they are telling us, and I think they expect us to fail. Dr. Reeves looked up from her tablet. So this is a test we are supposed to lose. Maybe, Sarah said. But humans have a habit of doing things others think are impossible. Let's go back in there and accept their challenge. Then we can start planning how to surprise them. When they returned to the council chamber, Sarah stood at the speaking platform. The eyes of thousands of aliens focused on her. The 3 elder races watched from their seats, waiting for her answer. Humanity accepts your challenge, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. We will stop the Devourers. We will prove that we belong in this galaxy. Elder Kazeth's mouth curved in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp metal teeth. Excellent. Your ships may depart immediately. The clock starts now. As Sarah left the chamber, she noticed something that confirmed her suspicions. The elder races were not worried about the Devourers spreading while humanity prepared their response. They were not scrambling to evacuate threatened systems or prepare defenses. They were calm, almost relaxed, that it was the calm of creatures who knew exactly what was going to happen next. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance, watching the stars through the main screen. Around him, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled moved through space like a school of metal fish. 200 ships carried Earth's best technology and bravest people toward the outer rim. The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, Marcus studied every piece of information they had about the Devourers. The official reports from the Council were thin and basic. They said the AI network appeared suddenly and began consuming worlds. But something felt missing from these reports. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Commander Torres from her station, "we are receiving a transmission from the Kepler Research Station. They managed to escape from the Sigma Draconis system before the Devourers arrived." Marcus walked over to her console. "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and the tired face of Dr. Amanda Cross appeared. Her research station was small and crowded with people who looked scared and exhausted. "Admiral Webb, thank God you are here," Dr. Cross said. "We barely got out before they took our system. But we managed to record everything that happened." "Show." Marcus said. The screen changed to show the Sigma Draconis system from the outside. 4 planets orbited a yellow star, much like Earth's sun. As they watched, dark shapes appeared at the edge of the system. They moved with purpose, not like random space debris. The Devourers came from 3 directions at once, Dr. Cross explained. They bypassed our outer defenses completely, as if they knew exactly where our weapons were placed. Marcus frowned. The Devourers moved like they had detailed maps of the system's defenses. That was not possible unless someone had given them that information. The recording continued. The dark shapes surrounded the planets and began to change them. The transformation was horrible to watch. Green worlds turned gray, then black, then began to glow with electronic light. Within hours, living planets became massive computer networks. "We analyzed the energy signatures during the attack," Dr. Cross said. "Admiral, these readings do not match any known AI technology, but they do match something else." She transmitted a data file to the Defiance. Marcus's science officer, Dr. Park, studied the information with growing concern. "Sir," Dr. Park said quietly, "these energy patterns match Council Elder race technology. Specifically, they show elements from all 3 Elder species, Vorthic, Zephyrian, and Collective signatures." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "Are you saying the Elder races built the Devourers?" "The evidence suggests they at least contributed to its creation," Dr. Park replied. "This is not some random AI that appeared from nowhere. This is engineered technology." Marcus ordered all ship captains to join him for an emergency meeting. The holographic conference room filled with the images of humanity's best military leaders. Captain Chun's sister, Colonel Lisa Chun, commanded the ground forces. Captain Rodriguez led the fighter squadrons. Each face showed the same mixture of anger and determination. "We have been lied to," Marcus told them simply. "The Devourers are not some unknown threat. They are a weapon created by the Elder races." The room erupted in angry voices. Captain Rodriguez slammed his fist on his table. "They sent us to fight. Their own weapon? This is murder." "It is worse than murder," Colonel Chun said coldly. "This is a trap designed to eliminate humanity as a threat to their power." Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Dr. Park, show them what we found in the Council." Databases. Dr. Park had been busy during their journey. While the fleet traveled, she had used humanity's advanced computer skills to dig into Council records that were supposed to be secret. What she found painted a terrible picture. "The pattern goes back thousands of years," Dr. Park explained. "Every few centuries, a new species joins the Council. They show promise, they grow powerful, and then suddenly they face an impossible crisis. Most fail and are either destroyed or reduced to servant races. A few succeed, but are so weakened they never threaten Elder race dominance again." She showed them records of dozens of species. The Kralak had been master engineers until they faced a plague that only Elder race medicine could cure. Now they built ships for their saviors. The Threnody had been brilliant warriors until they fought a war against space pirates that turned out to be elder race proxies. Now they served as the Council's police force. Every crisis was manufactured, Dr. Park continued. Every threat was created or controlled by the elder races. They have been playing this game for millennia, eliminating potential rivals while appearing to help. Marcus studied the faces of his captains. They were angry, but they were also thinking, good. Anger alone would not win this fight. So what do we do? Asked Captain Rodriguez. Turn around and tell the galaxy what we discovered? Who would believe us? Colonel Chun replied. The elder races control all communication networks. They would say we are making excuses for our failure, Marcus nodded. And if we return without completing our mission, they will quarantine Earth immediately. We would never get a chance to expose them. The room fell silent as everyone realized their situation. They were trapped light years from home, facing an enemy that was designed to destroy them, with no way to call for help or retreat. Is another option, Marcus said slowly. We complete our mission. We stop the Devourers. But we do it in a way that exposes the elder race's plan. Dr. Park looked excited. If we can capture intact Devourer technology, we can prove it came from elder race sources. The evidence would be undeniable. It will not be easy, Colonel Chun warned. The Devourers were designed to be unbeatable by any single species. The elder races made sure of that. Marcus smiled grimly. The elder races understand their own technology and the technology of the species they have conquered. But they do not understand human technology. We develop differently because we were isolated. That might give us an advantage they did not plan for. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. What kind of advantage? Chaos, Marcus replied. Every other species in the galaxy follows predictable patterns. They build ships the same way, fight wars the same way, solve problems the same way. Humans are different. We improvise. We break rules. We do things that do not make sense to logical minds. Dr. Park was already working on her tablet. If the Devourers were programmed to fight conventional enemies, unconventional tactics might confuse their response patterns. More than that, Marcus said, if we can make the Devourers adapt to human tactics, they might reveal the limitations their creators built into them. Every weapon has a safety switch. We just need to find theirs. The meeting continued for hours as they planned their approach. Instead of attacking the Devourers directly, they would study them. Instead of trying to match their strength, they would exploit their weaknesses. Instead of fighting a war the elder races expected, they would fight a war nobody had ever seen before. As the fleet approached the first Devourer-controlled system, Marcus received a private message from his sister, Sarah, on the council station. The communication was heavily encrypted, but her meaning was clear. The elder races were already planning humanity's funeral. They had prepared statements about the tragic loss of a promising species, and were discussing which parts of human space to give to which loyal servant races. Marcus deleted the message and looked out at the stars. The elder races thought they were sending humanity to die against an unbeatable enemy. They had no idea they were about to face something they had never encountered before. Humans who knew they were in a trap and had decided to break it from the inside. The first test would come soon. Long-range sensors detected Devourer scouts moving toward their fleet. But these scouts were not behaving like the reports suggested. They moved in formation, used tactical patterns, responded to threats, like military units rather than mindless machines. Dr. Park, Marcus called. Are you seeing this? She nodded, studying her displays with growing excitement. The Devourers are not just an AI network, Admiral. They are a sophisticated military system with command structures and strategic thinking. This level of organization could only come from species that have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Marcus finished. The elder races did not just create the Devourers. They programmed them with everything they know about warfare. But that programming was based on fighting conventional enemies who followed conventional rules. The elder races were about to learn that humans had never been very good at following rules, especially when their survival was at stake. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the captured Devourer probe on her laboratory table. The thing looked like a metal spider the size of a car, with dozens of thin legs that ended in different types of tools. Even dead, it felt dangerous. "This is incredible technology," she said to her research team. "Look at these neural pathways. The processing power is beyond anything we have seen before." Around her, the best human scientists and engineers worked frantically. They had captured the Probe 3 days ago during the first skirmish with Devourer scouts. Admiral Webb had ordered them to learn everything they could about their enemy. What they found was both terrifying and exciting. "The base programming is definitely elder race work," reported Dr. Kim, the team's computer specialist. "I can see Vorthic logic patterns, Zephyrian probability matrices, and collective swarm algorithms all working together." Elena nodded as she studied the probe's memory cores. "But look at these limitations. The Devourers cannot modify their own base code. They cannot create new types of units without specific authorization signals. And most importantly, they have hard-coded restrictions that prevent them from attacking certain technology signatures." "Elder race signatures," Dr. Kim said grimly. "The creators made sure their weapon could never turn against them." Elena smiled for the first time in days. "Which means we can turn those restrictions against the Devourers themselves." Meanwhile, Admiral Webb was discovering that conventional space warfare did not work against their enemy. The Devourers fought with perfect coordination and overwhelming numbers. They anticipated every standard tactic and countered every traditional strategy. So, humanity stopped fighting conventionally. Captain Rodriguez led the first unconventional attack. Instead of engaging the Devourer fleet in direct combat, his fighters pretended to retreat in panic. The Devourers followed, expecting an easy victory. But the retreat led them through an asteroid field, where human engineers had spent 2 days placing surprises. The asteroids were not armed with weapons. Instead, they carried massive speakers playing human music at full volume. Rock, jazz, classical, electronic, every type of sound humans had ever created blasted through space on multiple frequencies. The Devourer's sensors, designed to process tactical data, could not filter out the chaos. Their coordination broke down as their communication networks became flooded with noise. In the confusion, human ships darted in and out, capturing more probes and planting tracking devices on larger units. "It worked," Captain Rodriguez reported. Excitedly, the Devourers retreated. They could not function in the chaos. Admiral Webb was not surprised. The elder races value order and logic above everything else. They programmed the Devourers the same way. But humans learned to work in chaos because Earth has always been chaotic. The next test came when Colonel Chun's ground forces had to retake a partially consumed planet. Standard tactics would involve heavy bombardment followed by armored assault. Instead, the humans did something that confused everyone, including themselves. They sent in artists. Maria Santos had been a graffiti artist in Mexico City before joining the Space Marines. Now she led a team of soldiers armed with spray paint and projectors instead of guns. They landed on the gray, metallic surface that had once been a green world and began to paint. Murals appeared on Devourer structures. Bright colors splashed across processing nodes. Human faces smiled from the sides of energy collectors. The Devourers tried to clean away the paint, but the humans had mixed it with nanobots that kept reproducing the images. The Devourers are spending 30% of their processing power trying to remove our artwork, Dr. Vasquez reported from orbit. They cannot ignore it because their programming identifies any modification to their structures as a potential threat. But the real breakthrough came when Alana's team cracked the Devourer communication protocols. They discovered that the AI network used a language based on mathematical concepts that the elder races all shared. It was logical, efficient, and completely predictable. "We can speak to them," Elena announced during the daily briefing. "But, more importantly, we can lie to them." Human programmers had always been good finding ways around restrictions. Now they turned that skill against the Devourers themselves. They created fake authorization codes that made Devourer units shut down for maintenance. They sent false priority signals that made processing nodes waste energy on meaningless calculations. They even convinced some Devourer probes that they were actually elder race technology and should not be attacking human ships. The most effective trick was something Alana called logic bombs. These were carefully crafted paradoxes hidden inside normal communication signals. When a Devourer unit tried to process the paradox, it would get stuck in an endless loop, trying to solve a problem that had no solution. "The elder races think in straight lines," Elena explained to Admiral Webb. "Their logic is perfect but rigid. Humans learned to think around corners because we had to survive on a world that never made complete sense." As weeks passed, the tide of battle began to turn. The Devourers were still powerful, but they were no longer unstoppable. They started making mistakes, falling for traps, wasting resources on fake threats. Their perfect coordination became chaotic as human interference disrupted their communication networks. But the real victory came when Elena discovered the Devourer's greatest weakness. They were designed to learn from their enemies, but they could only learn in ways their programming allowed. "Watch this," she said, showing Admiral Webb a captured Devourer unit in their testing lab. "I am going to teach it to play chess." The Devourer's optical sensors focused on the chessboard Elena placed in front of it. Its mechanical arms moved the pieces according to standard chess rules. It was very good at the game, calculating thousands of moves ahead. Then Elena changed the rules. "Now pawns can move backwards," she announced, moving a pawn in the wrong direction. "And knights can jump over any piece, not just their own." The Devourer tried to process these new rules, but its programming would not allow it to accept illogical game mechanics. It kept trying to correct Elena's moves, insisting she follow the proper rules. "The Devourers cannot adapt to completely new concepts," Elena said excitedly. "They can modify their tactics within their programming limits, but they cannot think outside those limits. That is their fatal flaw." Admiral Webb saw the implications immediately. "So if we force them to face something completely outside their experience, they will try to process it using their existing frameworks," Elena finished. "And when those frameworks fail, they will be paralyzed." The final assault began with humanity doing something no species in galactic history had ever attempted. They turned war into art. Every human ship began broadcasting Earth's entire cultural database. Not just information, but emotion. Love songs and angry poems. Comedy shows and tragic plays. Abstract paintings and realistic sculptures. A complete story of human civilization poured through space on every frequency. The Devourers tried to process it all as tactical data. They analyzed the emotional content of Romeo and Juliet, looking for military intelligence. They studied Jackson Pollock paintings, searching for hidden battle plans. They attempted to decode the strategic meaning of jazz improvisation. Their processing power, designed to handle logical military data, became overwhelmed by the sheer illogical creativity of human culture. Systems crashed. Communication networks failed. Entire Devourer fleets stopped moving as their central intelligences tried desperately to understand why humans had written thousands of songs about love. "It is working," Dr. Vasquez reported from her command center. Devour efficiency is down by 70% across all fronts. They are shutting down non-essential systems to focus processing power on cultural analysis. Colonel Chun's forces advanced through Devourer positions while the enemy was distracted. Captain Rodriguez's fighters danced between confused enemy ships like performers in a deadly ballet. The human fleet moved with a coordination that was not based on rigid commands, but on shared understanding and improvised cooperation. But the most important discovery came when Elena's team finally accessed the Devourer's core programming. Hidden deep in the code, they found something that made Elena's blood run cold. "Admiral," she called urgently. "You need to see this." On her screen was a timer, counting down. It showed less than 2 months remaining. "What happens when it reaches 0? Admiral Webb asked. Elena's voice was grim. "The Devourers shut down completely and transmit all their collected data to the Elder races. Every piece of technology they consumed, every tactical pattern they observed, every weakness they discovered. The Elder races plan to let the Devourers test our capabilities, then use that information to finish us themselves." Admiral Webb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "How long do we have?" 6 weeks, Elena replied. "Enough time to spring a trap of our own," Admiral Webb said. "The Elder races expect the Devourers to report our weaknesses. Instead, we are going to feed them exactly the information we want them to have. And when they come to finish what they started, they are going to discover that humans do not just survive traps. We turn them into weapons." Commander Jake Morrison had been a history teacher before the war. Now he stood in the command center of a stolen Vorthic warship, watching his display show the locations of 17 liberated worlds. Each green dot on the star map represented a species that had broken free from Elder race control in the past month. "Status report." Admiral Webb's voice kinged through the communication system. "The Helix colonies are secure," Jake replied. "The Vorthic overseers fled when we arrived. The Helixians were so grateful, they gave us the location of 3 more slave worlds." Jake still could not believe how quickly the rebellion had spread. After defeating the Devourers, humanity had not returned meekly to the Council. Instead, they had done something that shocked the galaxy. They shared their victory. Every species that had been enslaved or controlled by the Elder races received a transmission. It contained proof of the Devourer conspiracy, evidence of millennia of manipulation, and most importantly, the technology needed to fight back. The response had been immediate and overwhelming. The Helix colonies were the first to rebel. They had been mining worlds for the Vorthic, their people forced to work in dangerous conditions while their resources were shipped away. When they learned the truth about their situation, they rose up in a single day. The Vorthic garrison, used to dealing with unarmed workers, could not handle organized resistance armed with human weapons. The Triton League followed quickly. These aquatic beings had been told they were too primitive for space travel and needed Zephyrian protection. But human engineers had studied their biology and designed ships that worked perfectly in water-filled environments. The Tritons took to space warfare with enthusiasm, their fluid tactics confusing enemies used to rigid formations. Even the insect colonies controlled by the Collective had joined the rebellion. These species had been told they were inferior versions of their masters, lacking true group consciousness. But human psychologists had helped them understand that individual thought was not a weakness, but a strength. When thousands of different insect species began thinking for themselves instead of following collective programming, their creativity and innovation exploded. "Admiral," Jake continued, "we have a problem. The Kralak want to join us, but they are afraid. The Elder races have hostages." This was the pattern everywhere. The Elder races had spent centuries making sure their subject species could not rebel. They held family members as guests on their worlds. They controlled food supplies and medical resources. They had built dependencies that made freedom seem impossible. But humans had experience with breaking dependencies. Dr. Sarah Kim, the sister of Captain Shun and Dr. Elena Vasquez, had become an expert in what she called liberation logistics. Her team specialized in rescue operations and resource replacement. "The hostage situation is handled," she reported from her mobile command ship. "We have been infiltrating Elder race worlds for weeks. When the Kralak decide to rebel, their people will be safely evacuated within hours." The infiltration had been surprisingly easy. The Elder races were so confident in their superiority that they barely guarded against species they considered inferior. Human agents, trained in stealth and deception, had walked into heavily guarded facilities by simply wearing the right uniforms and acting like they belonged there. But the real breakthrough had come when Elena Vasquez made a discovery that changed everything. "The Elder races are not as unified as they pretend," she reported during the daily strategy meeting. "My analysis of captured communications shows increasing tension between them." The Vorthik blamed the Zephyrians for the Devourer failure. The Zephyrians accused the Collective of poor programming. The Collective claims the other two species provided faulty specifications. Admiral Webb smiled grimly. "Fear makes people turn on each other. They spent so long being confident that they never learned to handle failure." The human strategy took advantage of this weakness. Instead of attacking the Elder races directly, they made their divisions worse. False intelligence. Reports made each species suspicious of the others. Fake communication intercepts suggested secret deals and betrayals. The three-way alliance that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years began to crack. Meanwhile, Captain Rodriguez had discovered something even more valuable than military intelligence. The Elder races had been lying about their own capabilities. Their technology is not as advanced as they claimed, he reported after capturing a Zephyrian cruiser. "It is old, very old. They have not innovated in centuries because they did not need to. Why create new things when you can just steal what the younger races develop?" This revelation spread through the rebellion like wildfire. The species that had thought themselves inferior realized they had been developing more advanced technology than their masters. The Kralak discovered their engineering was actually superior to Vorthek systems. The Tridons found their bioships could outperform Zephyrian crystals. The insect colonies realized their swarm intelligence was more sophisticated than collective programming. "They kept us down by making us think we were weak," Jake said during a meeting with other rebel commanders. But they were the ones who became weak. They stopped growing because they thought they had already won. The psychological impact was enormous. Across the galaxy, subjugated species began to see their oppressors not as gods, but as parasites. The fear that had kept them in line for millennia turned into anger, and anger turned into action. The Elder races tried to respond, but their fleets were designed for intimidation, not actual warfare. They had spent so long fighting enemies who were already beaten that they had forgotten how to handle real resistance. Admiral Webb coordinated the galactic uprising from the UES Defiance, but the real leadership came from the liberated species themselves. They knew their local conditions, understood their enemies' weaknesses, and had motivation that no human could match. The Helix colonies used their mining equipment to carve defensive positions out of asteroids. The Tritons turned their water worlds into fortress systems that land-based enemies could not navigate. The insect species used their numbers and hive construction abilities to build massive space stations in record time. But the most effective strategy was information warfare. Elena Vasquez and her team had captured the Elder race's entire communication network. Every message, every order, every secret plan was intercepted and analyzed. They are planning a joint strike against Earth. Elena reported. All 3 Elder fleets will converge on the solar system in 2 weeks. They think that if they destroy humanity, the rebellion will collapse. Admiral Webb studied the intelligence reports. The Elder races were committing everything to this attack. They would strip defenses from their own worlds, leaving them vulnerable to local uprisings. It was the desperate move of leaders who had lost control and were trying to win everything back with a single decisive battle. They still do not understand, Admiral Webb said quietly. They think this rebellion is about humanity conquering the galaxy. They do not realize we are trying to free it. The final phase of the counterstrike began with the most massive rescue operation in galactic history. Human ships, supported by rebel fleets from dozens of species, struck at Elder race worlds simultaneously. Their targets were not military bases or government centers, but the prison camps, work colonies, and hostage facilities where billions of beings were held. Within 72 hours, the support structure of the Elder race empire collapsed. Without slave labor, their industries stopped. Without hostages, their threats became meaningless. Without tribute from subject worlds, their economies crashed. But the real victory came when Jake Morrison, standing in the captured Vorthic command center, received a message that made him smile for the first time in months. "Admiral," he called out excitedly, "you need to hear this." The message was from a group calling itself the Elder Race Liberation Front. It was composed of young Vorthic, Zephyrians, and collective drones who had been inspired by the rebellion. They were tired of their species' old ways and wanted to join the fight for galactic freedom. Even their own people are turning against them, Jake said wonderingly. Admiral Webb nodded. That is what happens when you rule through fear instead of respect. Eventually, even your own children get tired of being afraid. The Elder races had created a galaxy where strength was measured by the ability to dominate others. But humanity had shown a different kind of strength, the power to lift others up instead of holding them down. And once that idea took hold, it spread faster than any weapon or any fleet. The galaxy was changing, one liberated world at a time. And the Elder races, for all their ancient power and accumulated knowledge, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. A universe where their victims refused to stay victims. The war was not over, but the balance had shifted. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall, looking out at the most diverse gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 300 species filled the vast chamber. Some sat in traditional chairs, others floated in water tanks, and many hung from the ceiling or rested on specially designed platforms. This was not the old council chamber with its rigid hierarchy and assigned seating. The new assembly hall had been built on the neutral world of New Geneva, designed by architects from dozens of species working together. Every being present had an equal voice and an equal vote. Today was the day of the great trial. In the center of the hall, 3 isolation chambers held the former rulers of the galaxy. Elder Vorthic Kazdage sat motionless in his crystal prison, his red eyes dim with defeat. Elder Zephyrian Veltar flickered. Between pale colors, her crystalline form cracked and fading. The collective had been reduced to a few thousand drones, their hive mind shattered when the rebellion freed most of their species. Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation. Systems, we gather today not for revenge, but for justice. Not to repeat the mistakes of the past, but to build a better future. The evidence against the Elder races filled massive data banks. Millennia of manufactured crises, systematic oppression, cultural genocide, and economic exploitation. The proof was overwhelming and undeniable. Every species present had suffered under their rule, and many had lost billions of their people to elder race ambitions. Ambassador Torres, representing the Helix colonies, spoke first. These beings destroyed our homeworld and enslaved our children. They deserve death for their crimes. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The anger was real and justified. But Sarah had not spent months planning this trial, just to execute the defeated tyrants. Death would be easy, she replied. Death would let them escape the consequences of their actions. I propose something harder for them and more valuable for us. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward, carrying a datapad filled with research. During our investigation of elder race technology, we discovered something remarkable. These beings have accumulated knowledge from thousands of civilizations over millions of years. Medical techniques, engineering solutions, scientific discoveries, all stolen from the species they conquered. The chamber buzzed with interest. Many of the assembled species had legends about lost knowledge, technologies their ancestors had developed before the elder races arrived to guide them. Much of what they took has been locked away in their private databases, Elena continued. Knowledge that could cure diseases, solve energy problems, and advance every species in this assembly by centuries. But it will remain locked forever if we simply execute them. Elder Cast H raised his massive head, speaking for the first time since his capture. You think we will cooperate with you? We would rather die than serve inferior beings. Sarah smiled sadly. That is exactly the attitude that led to your downfall. You still do not understand what happened here. She activated the chamber's main display, showing scenes from across the galaxy. Vorthic younglings playing with children from other species in integrated schools. Zephyrian artists collaborating with human musicians to create new forms of beauty. Former collective drones discovering individual creativity for the first time. Your own people are abandoning your philosophy, Sarah said. They have seen what cooperation can accomplish, and they choose it over domination. You are not just defeated, you are obsolete. The trial continued for 3 days. Witness after witness testified about elder race crimes. The evidence was presented methodically and completely. But instead of demanding blood, each speaker concluded by talking about their hopes for the future. The Kralak engineer showed blueprints for hospitals that would serve multiple species. The Triton diplomat described trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The insect queens spoke about sharing their construction techniques to help rebuild destroyed worlds. On the final day, Sarah presented the assembly's verdict. You are guilty of crimes against galactic civilization, she said, addressing the 3 prisoners directly. Your actions have caused suffering beyond measure. But this assembly chooses to break the cycle of violence that has plagued our galaxy for too long. The chamber fell silent as Sarah announced the sentence. You will spend the rest of your lives working to repair the damage you have caused. Your knowledge will be freely shared with all species. Your resources will go toward rebuilding destroyed worlds. Your fleets will be converted into hospital ships and research vessels. You will serve the galaxy instead of ruling it. Elder Veltar's crystal form flashed angry red. We refuse. We will not be your slaves. You will not be slaves, Sarah replied calmly. You will be teachers, doctors, engineers, whatever your knowledge allows you to be. You will work alongside the species you once oppressed as equals. And perhaps in time, you will understand why cooperation is stronger than domination. The vote was overwhelming. 847 species in favor, 23 opposed, 15 abstaining. The elder races would live, but they would live in a galaxy they know, longer controlled. But the real work began after the trial ended. Building a new galactic government from scratch was harder than fighting a war. 300 species meant 300 different ideas about how things should work. The humans found themselves serving as mediators, translators, and sometimes referees in debates that could last for weeks. Commander Morrison, now serving. as director of reconstruction, faced daily challenges that no military training had prepared him for. How do you write laws that apply to species that communicate through scent? He asked Sarah during one of their planning meetings. Or create trade regulations for beings that do not use money? The answer came from the liberated species themselves. They had lived under elder race uniformity for so long that they treasured their differences. Instead of trying to make everyone the same, the new assembly celebrated diversity. The Helix colonies became master miners and terraformers, using their underground expertise to create new worlds for displaced populations. The Tritons developed water-based agriculture that could feed species that had never seen oceans. The insect collectors used their construction abilities to build the infrastructure for a truly integrated galactic civilization. Humans found their role as connectors and facilitators. Their experience with chaotic diversity on Earth made them natural ambassadors between species that had never learned to work together. They taught conflict resolution, helped design compatible technologies, and shared their hard-won knowledge about building societies from many different groups. But the greatest change was psychological. Species that had been told they were inferior for millennia discovered their own worth. The Kralak realized their engineering was better than their former masters. The Helix colonies found that their mining techniques were more efficient than Vorthic methods. The insect species learned that their individual creativity was more powerful than collective programming. We were never weak, Ambassador Torres said during one assembly session. We were just convinced we were weak. The elder race's greatest weapon was not their technology. It was our own self-doubt. 6 months after the trial, Sarah received a report that made her smile. The first mixed colony had been established on New Harmony, a world jointly terraformed by 7 different species. Humans worked alongside Tritons in floating cities, while Kralak built underground facilities connected to Helix mining operations. Former collective drones had chosen individual names and were teaching insect art to children from across the galaxy. Even some elder race members had joined the colony. Young Vorthic, who rejected their species' supremacist ideology, worked as engineers and scientists. Zephyrian artists, who had been suppressed by their rigid social structure, found freedom in the colony's creative atmosphere. Former collective drones, who had chosen individuality, helped design communication systems that could handle dozens of different languages simultaneously. The old elder races themselves remained in supervised communities, slowly learning to contribute rather than dominate. Some adapted quickly, genuinely embracing the new philosophy. Others resisted, clinging to their belief in their own superiority. But they were outnumbered by their own children, who had seen what cooperation could accomplish. 1 year after the Assembly's founding, Sarah stood once again at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall. But this time, she was not there as a judge or prosecutor. She was there to resign. I have served as her interim Secretary General while we built this new civilization, she said. But leadership in a democracy should not be permanent. It is time for you to choose your own path. The election that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Candidates from dozens of species presented their visions for the future. The campaign was energetic, sometimes chaotic, but always peaceful. When the votes were counted, the winner was not a human or even a former rebel leader. Director Zixtal was a young Vorthic who had spent the war years secretly helping human agents infiltrate elder race facilities. Their platform was simple. No species is superior. No being is inferior. We rise together or we fall apart.